I guess I'm going. Cool. Well, ladies and gentlemen, how do you do? Trying to learn how to press the button without it going right away, and it looks like we're going right away, so pressure's on, folks. Let's see, I'm just gonna get a few things going here. Okay, so how do you do, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Dustin Cormier. Welcome to another episode of How to Rock Spirit. Feel free to leave a YouTube comment. That's what this little box here is for. And we will see them live on this little box. And, you know, just throw in whatever comments you feel like. Sometimes I won't be able to answer them because I'm trying to stick to the conversation at hand. But every now and then I'll try to rap how I can with you guys, our community. Today we are going to do an episode of, I guess I'll show you me first. I'll tell you what we're doing. Today we're doing the second episode in our Chinese Tropical Astrology series, where we combine Chinese astrology with tropical astrology. You guys are hearing me blabber. There we go. There's a picture of me, and here is what we're doing today. It's our second episode of our Chinese Tropical Astrology series, where we're going to talk about the Sun or any other hugely prominent planet in Taurus, Libra, or Cancer, combined with someone with a prominent emphasis of the sign of the Ox in their Ba-Zi chart. So we've got the Water Pancha Tattva, which is Taurus, Libra, and Cancer. We're going to talk about what the Pancha Tattvas are, and what do these three sun signs have to do with each other. And then later on we're going to talk about the sign of the Ox. So, thank you very much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. We're doing these videos as a journey to uncover the differences and similarities and usefulness between Chinese astrology and tropical astrology. I'm a tropical Vedic astrologer. I roll in my Western astrology. I roll by along the lines of Ryan Kirksack, Ernst Wilhelm, Victor Kara, combining the essence of the Vedic astrology with tropical Western coordinates. So, if you're a Western astrologer and you have your sun in Taurus, Libra, or Cancer, you might find interest in this video, and especially if you're looking for the sun signs in particular. At the end of this video, I'm going to do a reading from just some texts that I have of the sun sign nature combined with the ox nature from such people as Mantak Chia, Suzanne White, Theodora and Laura Lau. These are people who have made Western translations of the Eastern signs. We're going to hear a little bit of those. We're going to listen to those at the end of this video. For now, this video is me doing my own thing, talking about the Pancha Tattvas and how these three signs in the Water Pancha Tattva reflect on the nature of the sign of the Ox. Now, without further ado, yeah, let's get into it, folks. Please feel free to leave me a comment, and we will rap about it. Feel free to ask any questions as we go along. And I always like to say, yeah, I guess I'll say this. Don't hesitate to let me know in the comments whether you think my analysis is correct, incorrect, silly, spot on, whatever you think. Because as much as I've been researching these things, and I've just got textbooks, and I'm trying to learn more about the signs all the time. This combination of Chinese astrology and Western astrology is still a new frontier for us. The neurospheres of the Chinese astrology is a new phenomenon to Western occultism. So I'm just doing what I can to break down the symbols and see how they fit together. A lot of times it's bound to be coming through my own subjective filters. So I encourage you and everybody in our community to make your own videos, describe, pin me to the wall if you think that what I said is just totally bogus or whatever, and let's get the wheels turning in motion, because I think that both of these have something to offer each other, and both of these astrologies have something to offer each of us. They're two different energy spheres. It's not like a difference in measurement. They're literally talking about two different parts of our energy sphere, and in order to know what they're about, we have to sift the hash a little bit to get out the golden nuggets of hash. Oh yeah, okay. So let's get started, folks. My name is Dustin Cormier. It's a pleasure to meet you if you haven't seen any of my videos yet. I'm a Leo rising with the Sun in Scorpio, with Sagittarius moon. The Scorpio goes deep into researching things, one particular thing, and the Sagittarius moon keeps me from getting stuck in one thing. I'm always bouncing into all the world's different cultural ideologies, or at least I try to, as much as possible. I'm born in the year of the goat, that's 1991, with the boar as my month branch, and the water horse as my day pillar. If you've been watching my idea of Chinese astrology, it suggests that the day stem is the figurehead of the chart, and it expresses the deepest part of the personality as far as Chinese astrology goes. Today we're talking about Taurus, Libra, and Cancer in the sign of the ox. What do these three signs have to do with each other? Oh yeah. Okay, we'll get to that. First, I just want to say, check out my band, The Goombas. We just put out a new single. We're re-releasing our album. We got some fun stuff going on. Check out DustinCormier.net for all things Dustin Cormier, and my new book, Solipsis Eclipse, done with a few of my buddies. You can find it on Amazon. Selfless, shameless plug, I know. Now, what do Taurus, Libra, and Cancer have to do with each other? This is what we're going to start getting into today, ladies and gentlemen. Without further ado. Now, have you ever noticed that there's more to the qualities of the Western sun signs than just their elements and modality? Elements meaning, the four elements. Let's say Libra is an air sign, and the modality figures into the fact that Libra is one of the four cardinal signs. Active signs, they're often called. So, it seems that there are other subtle, when you hear somebody intuitively talking about Libra, for example, there are things about the Libra that they just pull out of their brain in their experience, which cannot be seen just by those two factors. The air sign, for a Libra, the air sign as a cardinal sign. The air sign as a cardinal sign, nature of Libra, expresses Venus. That is the same statement. Libra is Venus, and Libra is the cardinal air sign. But the fact that Libra is ruled by Venus tells us more. There are extra things to be known about the sun signs. So, as I would like to say, what these modern writers and people who intuitively talk about the sun signs we see on YouTube, they are intuiting the sign's true essence. And this is what our word tattva comes from. Tattva means like an essence. So the Pancha Tattvas, Pancha means five, and therefore Pancha Tattvas means that there are five essences hanging over top of all of the astrological signs. May seem confusing, but it's always nice when we find a new way to organize our symbols and to see connections between them. Because if you think it's easier to just go by, you know, the element and the modality, you're missing out on information. And it's always best to go by the knowledge, the true knowledge, rather than just what we think is easier to talk about. We're going to talk about how the sun's dignity in each sign changes its relationship with the sign. What does that mean? This reading, before I get into this, I will say, this reading is, well, I wanted to do these readings because of these things I do at the end. I'm going to make another bunch of videos, or like today, after this video, right after, we're going to talk about, for example, the year of the ox with the sun in Cancer, let's say. I wanted to talk about what, at the very end, we're going to talk about that sun sign in particular. But for these videos that you're watching right now, we are not just talking about the sun necessarily. You can also consider that this reading also relates to the Ascendant Lord and the Moon also as a personal planet. It can even be considered as the Ascendant. Let's say, I'm going to try to get this info out of your face just for a moment. Let's say you have a Cancer Ascendant with the Moon in Cancer in the first house, okay? You might get a much, like, especially because that's the Ascendant Lord in Cancer in the first house. You know, you would get a deeper reading about yourself from reading about Cancer with this video, Cancer in the year of the ox, than you would with the sun sign. If your sun was in, for example, like Virgo with that combination. Cancer, having the Moon in the first house with a Cancer Ascendant, is a much deeper reading. So this is the point, is that the sun sign factor is here, and if you will learn about your sun sign. If your sun is in one of these three signs, you will learn about it. But always consider that, you know, the sun, we have a habit in the West of thinking that the sun, it is the center of the galaxy. It's true. But there's a lot to be said about the combinations of the Ascendant Lord to the soul. Because the Earth, which is kind of what makes the Ascendant sign, it's the turning of the Earth. The Earth is our reflection of the sun's light. So while the sun is ultimately a deep expression of what your soul is when combining everything, the Earth, and especially the Ascendant and the Ascendant Lord in particular, the Ascendant Lord in its place, let's say if you've got the sun in like Capricorn, you know, and it's whatever, you'll only get so much out of this reading with the sign of the ox. But even someone with a sun who has nothing to do with the Water Pancha Tattvas, if that person has their Ascendant Lord in Cancer, Libra, or Taurus, the Ascendant Lord represents it's the doorway of the Ascendant, and it's the doorway of our physical growth on the planet, and a huge part of the opening gate of the soul. That opening gate eventually fruits the shape of the sun, but early in life, you're not even expressing the sun yet. You're more expressing the Ascendant and the Ascendant Lord. So consider this whenever you hear me say that this reading is like a sun sign reading. It's also the Ascendant Lord in its place, or the Ascendant itself if it has a personal planet in the first house. Like if you've got Virgo Ascendant and you've got the Moon in the first house in Virgo, that Moon, because it's such a deep part of your personality and it's in the first house, this reading might give you a deeper feeling. Sorry, yeah, not Virgo. I messed that up. Let's say you got Libra Ascendant. This is Libra is one of the three that we're talking about today. And if the Moon is in that Libra Ascendant, that's a personal planet, this reading is for you. And you might even get more out of it than you would with a sun sign reading. Now, I would also like to say that I'm just starting to do these videos, so the more videos like this I do, the better I'll get at explaining what I'm trying to explain. So I appreciate your patience. In Vedic astrology, let me just see if, yeah. Actually, you know what? Quick check to see if anybody's asked anything. Chelsea! My dear friend Chelsea! How you doing, girl? My friend Chelsea is on here saying hi. She's a friend of mine here in Ontario, Canada. I'm honored to have her beautiful face on my channel. Feel free to say hi, Chelsea, anytime. It's nice to see you. Okay. Cool. I feel better now. Now, in Vedic astrology, when we listen to a cookbook-style reading, like this one, where we're taking ingredients and just trying to smash them together, we must take the state of the planet into consideration to discern whether or not the positive qualities attributed to the Pancha Tattva and the animal sign will manifest. The Pancha Tattva has qualities. Whether those qualities express fluently and in the proper way that it's supposed to, or not, depends on the dignity of the planet which is expressing itself through that Pancha Tattva. Whether it's the sun, the ascendant lord. And it's the same thing with the animal sign. Ox, every Chinese animal has its positive and negative manifestations. Generally, it's going to find its way between both, because the one is also the other. You know, it's like the bright side of a mountain has to have a shadow side. And the shadow side's worth the bright side. That's part of the strangeness of the Tao. It just comes out as it is. And we've got to deal with the minuses and the pluses after the heart expresses its nature. And we have to consider whether we might be too much of our nature in each and every situation. You can never really put a formula on it. Now the point is, I'm a Vedic astrologer, and I'm going to talk generally. I've been taking Ryan Kirksack's astrology course, and he's been getting me to think about how different planets could have different states of health and dignity. And this is a, you know, you can't just assume that if you have the sun in like Leo, for example, that it's going to work perfectly perfect. Depends on the ascendant sign and the house that it's in and all the other planets that interact with it. So, if we're regarding the sun, if you're looking at this video for the sun sign, say you've got the sun in Cancer, and you're in the sign of the ox, you've got to consider the dignity or state of the sun, since, you know, this will be a sun sign reading for you in that regard. In which case, you guys will see later, we're going to talk about the permanent relationships of the planets. Like, for example, the sun is friends with Cancer. So the sun does good in Cancer, and that bodes well for this Pancha Tattva reading that you're going to read. It's going to tend to express the positive qualities of the sun, as well as the Water Pancha Tattva, and as well as the ox. But mind you, this is the sun. The sun's dignity is just one factor. There are many factors in ascribing the total state and health of a planet. So we will talk about the sun's relationships soon. So you check the dignity of the sun, and then you check the prosperity of the house the sun is in. And we have the prosperities of the houses here. We're not going to go into it completely, but I'm going to pause it just so you can take in all of this, because it's very important to describing, because the house is like the quality of soil which the planet, the gardener, is throwing the seeds into. You know, you'd have this great planetary seed of Jupiter, but if you throw it into a house which has no fertile prosperity influences, it's going to have a harder time growing. So check the prosperity of the house that the sun or the planet in question is. You must also consider, if you have the sun in Cancer, Cancer is ruled by the moon. So when this says check the dignity or state of the planet ruling the sun's sign or the ascendant ruler's sign, in this case it's either going to be the moon or Venus. So if you have the moon in Cancer, the health of the moon is going to say something about the overall reading. If your sun is in Cancer, the sun wants to express the Water Pancha Tattva. And if your moon, if your moon is asleep in a bad dignity, like say Capricorn, if it's with Saturn or Mars, if it's in like the 6th or the 8th house, if it is at like 0 degrees, or the Avashta has to do with the degrees. So if it's in the ending old age degrees or the almost retired old age degrees, that will damage the planet. As well as, especially if, let's say you've got the sun in Cancer, you've got the moon in Capricorn, which bodes bad for the moon. And then let's say your Saturn is in Aries, and that even disrupts the house that the moon is sitting in. It's a spider web of causation, which we have to consider if we're going to ever give a true reading of the positive or negative qualities of a planet. And in most cases, it will be somewhere in the cold or warm, but it'll never be super hot on one thing, usually. Sometimes it is. Sometimes you can have the sun in its own house in Leo, and the planet, which rules Leo, being the sun, is in its own house. That's a whole lot of good stuff going on there, and that'll help the sun express Leo. But that would be for a Leo reading. We're talking about Cancer, Libra, and Taurus. And so we could say the same thing about if the sun or the ascendant lord is in Libra or Taurus. Meaning, if the sun is in Taurus, you got to check out how Venus is doing. If the planet in question, whether it's the sun or, the Pancha Tattva that we're talking about, if the planet in question has more of these negative indications than prosperous ones, we might consider that the ruling Pancha Tattva, water, which is still part of the person's essential nature, is damaged, and that primary lifeline has some karma to be worked out. So this person has a deep torrent in themselves where there's an open gate. You only have so much space in your energy spheres to open so many gates for expressing energy. Now, if you take all this space in your heart, your heart area, to open up to the Water Pancha Tattva, like for example, if you have the sun in Cancer, and your moon has all those negative qualities that we talked about, you've made all this space for this one particular opening, and you are not allowing yourself to take advantage of that. That means that you will want to express the Water Pancha Tattva, and you will have trouble because your planet is in a negative... your planet just does not have the psychological draw from your life experiences to properly express that gate that you've designed for yourself in your past lives. But of course, if that is the case for you, if you have a heavy emphasis on the Water Pancha Tattva and you have difficulty expressing it, just remember that every chart has a destiny. And it's up to you how to use the elements of your destiny properly to unlock the best use of your consciousness. Nobody's consciousness is ever so bad that it cannot be put in a positive light, ultimately. You just have to understand the divine knowledge and understand how to twist the light and the dark in a way that the transcendental can be realized through that blueprint. Anyway, that's a lot of words, but what I like to say is that the quiet glories of a dignified, resolute, quiet existence are the same to the eye of the Veda as the boasts of a king. As Krishna says in the Srimad Bhagavatam, a handful of rice from the lowest of his devotees is worth as much to him as all the wealth of a rich Brahmin, if it is given up with a pure heart and the intent of sacrifice to Krishna, the mysterious divine in all. What matters is your quality of devotion and surrender to what is, to the chart and to the pain which you have to move through, expressed by your chart. In my opinion. I wonder if I'm boring you guys here. Let's see. Hey Goosey, and hello Anime. Glad you guys are watching. Yeah, so every now and then I'm just going to poke on our comments, see if we've got anything meaty to add. For now, we shall continue. So again, we're getting into the Pancha Tattvas, which is the shared nature between the sun, the shared nature between Venus and the moon, and the signs of Cancer, Taurus, and Libra. What do these three have in common? The Water Pancha Tattva. So when we discuss the Pancha Tattvas, oh yeah, we've kind of talked about this. The Ascendant Lord, the Sun, the planet with the highest Shadbala score. Just consider that there's a big, in Ernst Wilhelm's Graha Sutras, which is where I get, it's where I've gotten all this Pancha Tattva knowledge. It's particularly from his book. I should get it out just so I can show. Because it's important for me to note my sources. It's always important for anybody doing this stuff to note their sources. I get most of this information from, let's see, yeah, Ernst Wilhelm's Graha Sutras. That's where I get my knowledge of the Pancha Tattvas and what I'm talking about here. So, and in that book, he talks about the fact that the planet with the highest Shadbala score deeply represents your ruling Pancha Tattva. And it's sort of in a physical way, and it is deeply true. So consider the planet with the highest Shadbala score when you're looking at this reading. If you're in the year or the sign of the ox in any way, and you have Water Pancha Tattva as your highest Shadbala score, that would mean if the moon or if Venus have the highest Shadbala score in your chart, this reading would be for you. Same thing with the Atmakaraka. If you have the highest, the Atmakaraka has to do with the degrees. And if the highest degree, depending on whether the planet, the sign is a positive or negative, your Atmakaraka also has to do with the Pancha Tattvas. And if you read your Atmakaraka nature in the Pancha Tattva, like if your Atmakaraka is the moon or Venus, you will probably read your nature in this reading as well. Especially, yeah, if you're in the sign of the ox as well. Oh yeah, I guess I should say, I was going to pause this here, in case anybody wants to read the nature of the prosperity of a house and the annihilation of a house. When considering, you know, whether it's your Ascendant Lord, the Sun, the Atmakaraka, or your highest Shadbala planet. Because we're going to read the nature of the Pancha Tattva, the Water Pancha Tattva, and it's going to say this could be for good or bad. You have to know how strong the planet in question is to know whether it is ultimately something that's good or something that ought to be balanced with the other Pancha Tattvas. Now, I've got this slide here. Can you guys see me? I've got this slide here. You're going to have to... Alright, I don't usually do this. Come on, you bugger. I'm trying to shrink this window here. That guy. Yeah, something like that. I just want you to see that this is a quote from the Brihat Parashara Horasastra, Results of the Five Elements, from Ernst Wilhelm in his Graha Sutras. The person born when Mars is strong, is with strength, is of fiery nature. So that's Mars is fire, Mercury is earth, Jupiter is the ether, Venus is water, and Saturn is air, windy. And then when it's mixed, is of mixed nature, oh good twice born. The point I wanted to move that my little window there, yeah, is for you to see that during the sun, when the sun is strongest, or when it's the sun that we're talking about, it's a fiery, it's the fire Pancha Tattva. And if it's the moon that we're talking about, it's considered as the water Pancha Tattva. And this is in Brihat Parashara Horasastra. That's why, excuse me, when I keep asking, what do the signs of Cancer, Libra, and Taurus have to do with each other? Has to do with the fact that they are all considered under the umbrella of the water Pancha Tattva. And that's why if we're considering that you have a prominent placement in Cancer, ruled by the moon, we're going to consider it as a water Pancha Tattva reading. Okay. Now, the sun's permanent planetary relationships. Hopefully you can see that. Gosh. At the bottom, yeah. Okay, I'll explain first. So according to The Art and Science of Vedic Astrology by Ryan Kirksack and Richard Fish, who also, I'm taking Ryan's courses, and his exhortation of these permanent relationships in his book, they themselves come from Brihat Parashara Horasastra, I believe. It comes from certainly one of the ancient texts anyway. So this is the sun's permanent relationships. I'm putting this here because if we're talking about a sun reading with the sun in Cancer, in Taurus, or Libra. Again, the sun is friends with Cancer, so the sun will have a good relationship with Cancer and with the water Pancha Tattva in this direction. But the sun does not have as good of a relationship with Taurus or Libra. Venus is an enemy to the sun in this way, you know. Of course, this only ever means that the sun, what the sun's nature in regard to everything, in relation to everything else, when it wants to express itself in its nature, it tends to be rigid and strong and powerful, and that can work for Cancer. But with Taurus and Libra do best by being slowly enduring and determined. So when you have the sun in Taurus or Libra, it's like the sun wants to go hard and Taurus and Libra want to go slow, and it can often sort of have an odd relationship there. But of course, you know, the sun is your ascendant lord, and it's like in like the 5th house because you've got a Gemini rising, you know. The 5th house or it's in the 10th house. If the sun in Libra is in the 10th house, that would be for Cancer, no? Capricorn, I'm sorry. Capricorn rising. The sun is in Libra in the 10th house. The 10th house is very good by Shatbala, so that would be, even though it's in Libra, it would still be a probably great sun reading. So these are the kind of things we have to consider. It's also important for us to describe the moon's permanent planetary relationships. If you have the sun in Cancer, or your Shadbala planet is in Cancer, or if it's your highest Shadbala planet is the moon, the moon's placement in a Mercury, Sun, or Moon-ruled sign bodes well, whereas the moon's relationship with a Jupiter, Mars, Saturn, or Venus sign is neutral. And as they say, the moon is so adaptive that it has no enemies. It's got 8 legs and it can figure out how to work things out in any sign, technically. Venus's permanent relationships. It's good friends with Mercury, Saturn, and itself. So if it's in any of their signs of rulership, it'll tend to do better. It's neutral with Jupiter and Mars signs, and it is an enemy to the moon and to the sun. Believe it or not, that is generally how it's considered. The moon is kind of hurt a little bit in Cancer because, Venus is hurt a little bit in Cancer because Venus likes to have a little bit of objectivity. Although it is like emotional, Venus is this funny blend, and it's best. It's a blend between the rational mind and the emotional mind. And it lends itself best when it has a little bit of objectivity and impartiality, because it is so watery and subjective internally. It's got such a waterfall of sensation, usually, Venus, that it does best to have an impartial thinking to kind of break it up from itself. Jupiter and Mars can be a little bit subjective in that regard, but especially Mercury, Saturn, and Venus, being friends with Venus, these signs will give Venus, if Venus is in any of these signs, it'll give Venus some impartiality and the ability to be warmly with that sign, but also to give itself some objectivity so it doesn't get too clung. Whereas in Cancer or Leo, Venus just becomes too... In Leo, Venus becomes too wrapped up in what it wants to do, and it comes off as just being... It's just trying too hard, and it's stressing itself out. Venus wants to chill, ultimately. Cancer also is, because it's so subjective, it puts all of its emotions into whatever it's doing. And when Venus is in Cancer, Venus is troubled by the rippling of the moon and of the emotions. And the moon can deal with the moon because it's used to the bending and twisting and, but the moon turns on its emotions. When Venus makes a bond, a contract, a democratic oath, which is the kind of things that Venus in the 7th house do, it doesn't want to bend because of emotions. It wants to think logically on the bigger picture. Venus in Cancer has a hard time doing that because the deepest instinct is just to go by what its gut emotion tells it, which can be a good thing in circumstances, but usually not for Venus. If you have Venus in Cancer and you have a wife, or a husband, a lover, shall we say, and they can feel that their bond with you, their contract with you, their promises to you are wavering because of the deep emotions that they're feeling, it can make them very uncomfortable. Whereas Venus in Gemini knows the bond, knows the contract they made, and is not being compelled to twist due to the emotions. Gemini's got an easier time seeing mentally between the fact that they've made the commitment with the person and they have emotions. Even Venus in Virgo has this, although it's a bit too much of that impartiality. It's debilitated. But it's still a friend to Venus, so, never take one form to be fully one thing. Astrology is something that we have to be willing to be like the Water Pancha Tattva, to move and to look at the logic and the data and never be fully concretized by that data. So the effects indicated by the dominant element, water, these represent some of the individual's finest qualities. However, the individual will often not be of the exemplary quality described in the sutras. So this is what I was getting at. The individual may simply be a less capable person as a whole, temporarily or for good, temporarily relating to the dashas, which I'll explain. Thus, their elemental capabilities will also be less overall. Again, if you've made all this space for an opening for the Water Pancha Tattva, and you do not exemplify it, either permanently or temporarily, that hole is just being wasted. When attributing the qualities of the dominant element of the Water Pancha Tattva to an individual, consider the elemental effects in respect to the whole horoscope and thus to the person as a whole, not just to the Pancha Tattva in question. Now we're going to talk about the Water Pancha Tattva. I'm just going to check out. No extra comments. Groovy. Okay. Qualities of the Water Pancha Tattva. Now we're talking about, I wanted to ground the water, the Venus and Moon vibration of the Water Pancha Tattva before we get into the year of the ox. So, someone with an emphasis on the water element is lovely and burden-bearing with affectionate speech, a lord of the earth with many friends, gentle and learned. That comes from Brihat Parashara Hora Shastra, Results of the Five Elements, line 9. And that, of course, itself, that translation comes from Ernst Wilhelm in his Graha Sutras. Now, I wonder how much of... Good, that's not getting cut off. The individual with the water element dominating is lovely on account of soft and gentle features. Their personality is likewise gentle and affectionate. Thus, they maintain well their friendships and have so many friends. It's Libra, Taurus, Cancer. Water comforts and soothes. That's what they do best. And thus these individuals are capable of bearing great burdens because of that way of resolving the tensions of life. When water is at its strongest, it can wash away the burning that Mars did in the Fire Pancha Tattva and cool it so that Mars can feel satisfied and can keep going. Water provides these people the comfort that allows them to carry great burdens with less strain. Wives, ruled by Venus, are able to bear the greatest burden of all, bearing children, because of their slow endurance and love for the child. All those things that allow one to carry burdens or bear difficulties more easily are provided for by water and thus ruled by Venus. So a saddle blanket on a horse, underneath your butt, cushions, the shock-absorbing soles in running shoes are just a few examples expressing what Venus as a Water Pancha Tattva is. And this expresses something by which Taurus and Libra and Cancer have great potential to express their energy with. Because, one of the reasons Taurus can endure so far is because they know how to make themselves comfortable and in order to commit to whatever it is that they're going to do. Same thing with Cancer, Libra to less of a degree, but still the same. Libra is more about knowing how to give that comfort to other people in relationships. Taurus is more about providing that comfort for oneself. Water is both receptive and devotional in nature. And thus, these individuals learn well that which they are drawn towards. Devotion attunes their minds towards those studies which are dear to them, upon which they are receptive to the many truths of that which they study. They have a devotional attitude towards learning, so they are receptive to the many truths of which they study because they put a certain degree of deep faith in it. It's good to have a balance of all the Pancha Tattvas so that the watery person with their devotional energy does not get caught on just one ideology. But, as the old saying in Western occultism goes, engulf thyself in thy prayer, and there will be nothing left but the smell of the spirit by which you engulfed yourself. Water is very important on Earth, a fact which is shown by the Earth being largely covered with water, the globe that is. Thus, the water element provides an innate knowledge of the affairs of the planet Earth. Venus, in fact, is considered to be full of worldly knowledge in the Vedic tradition. So thus, the water element dominated person, and this includes someone who's got the moon as their main emphasis. The water aspect shared by the moon is also shared by Venus. So this Lord of the Earth thing includes Cancer too. The water element dominated person is thus considered a Lord of the Earth, as their great worldly knowledge makes them very equipped to rise to the top. They have a sense of business contracts, of emotional realities, of the spinning wheel of human emotions by which you must always turn any mechanism when you're dealing with humans. They're good at dealing with humans because they know that people turn. And so they have a deep sense when water is expressed properly, when the heart comes through and the person gives themselves to people no matter what. And usually they express devotion to people and they say, I'm going to want to try and help you. And the person says, oh good, you're going to help me, good. So let's do the thing. And water tries to find a way to help. And the person is changing all the time. As soon as water tries to fix it on one thing, the person changes. After enough of this, water learns that there's a way to help mass amounts of people with ergonomic thinking and with a knowledge of the fact that people are always turning. So they do well in business. They know how much a person's going to turn on emotionally or whether they are guided by something else. This is the colliding on the water that Venus and the moon tend to have a good sense of. So that's why Parashara has noted that these people are a lord of the earth. They tend to have many friends, gentle and learned, because they'd rather, when water expresses itself well, they would rather keep the friend in the long run than to burn the relationship due to some business affair. And that's why they can endure so well. Other signs, like a Mars-ruled person, might get angry in a business relationship because we have to discipline each other in business whenever we're talking and dealing and wheeling and dealing, not just business, but with ourselves. But when dealing with business, the Mars side of a person might say, you messed up on this business deal and you've got to learn not to do that, and the Mars person will get in there. It takes a strong Venus to both take that Mars with credulity and to understand it, to be receptive to the tension that's expressed as discipline there in the interest of Mars, and to translate it into, ideally, the duty of air. Water tends to take its pains and express it as generative cycle. Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess you could say it also translates it to ether, because when you've got a deeply strong water vibe, It gives you a better capacity to meditate and to think about things which are deeper and higher than just this moment of tension between yourself and the Mars and that other person. So these are the kind of things we think about when we're thinking about the Pancha Tattvas. In the same way that the liver is not just this one isolated organ, it is also the filter for the kidneys. It is also the energy transistor for the fire of the heart and the small intestine. And the Chinese say that all these organs are not just one isolated organ, they're connected. In the same way, the expression of Venus is the expression of everything that Venus touches and connects with. So we have to consider them kind of all as one. Now, I did want to mention that for anyone who's watching this, if you feel like you've got a strong emphasis of this, if this is your highest Shadbala planet, if we're talking about like Venus or the Moon is your Atmakarika, Ascendant Lord, whatever it is, know that you might be feeling debilitated or incapable with regard to this planet, and you can't express your emotions properly. It might not be permanent. It could just be a temporary condition due to transits or the dasha period. The Mahadashas are they're the deepest, Vimshatari dashas are the deepest thing available in any dimension of astrology, if you ask me. And they will alter your feeling of your Pancha Tattva ruler. So just always consider that. We're going to talk about the dashas later, but we can see, for example, if you're in Mercury dasha and you have an emphasis on the water, on water as your sign, you'll be forced to start being more analytical. You'll be forced to start looking at the details of, while the Venus in you just wants to make itself satisfied, it wants to be emotionally comfortable, and it wants to have a strength inside itself to be able to endure through anything. If you've got Taurus Sun, if you've got Libra Sun, if you've got Cancer Sun, Mercury Dasha will kind of force you to let go of a little bit of that for the sake of a business, to be impartial with business operatives, and to put some diligent 6th house mercurial energy into something to really show your devotion. This could dry you out, but it could also be deeply satisfying in a Mercury dasha. So if you have a strong Venus, you will be carried well through your Mercury dasha if you've got a strong Mercury too. If you have a weak Venus, Mercury might dry you out a little bit. But this is the point of what we're saying here, is that you should take advantage of Mercury drying you out a little. Let it be what it is, because if you've got either a weak Venus or, too strong a Venus, let's say, in the case of the weak Venus, you should certainly be careful here. But this Earth represents something that you need. If you have a weak Venus and a very strong Earth, make sure that you do not cut off the heartfelt, internal, spiritual, devotional system that keeps you not just alive and on Earth and having good finances, but take care of yourself. Eat good food, because the Venus in you will probably want it. Or the Moon, the Cancer in you, will probably want that feeling of deep emotional security, because that will help you to be strong when you have to be strong, when the Mercury dasha calls you to cultivate a solid foundation for a business or for anything. Earth sensibly organizes water and puts water to work. Now, as terms of if you come to a Mars dasha and you've got this Venus or Water Pancha Tattva emphasis, Unfortunately, I've got wood for ether and metal for air here, so ignore that. If you come to the Mars Dasha and you have a strong Venus, whatever Mars calls you to do, you will have the capacity to... Mars will probably deeply enrich you. It will make you feel satisfied in a way that just healing yourself, or just, having a deep emotional security, that fourth house lunar moon type security, that can take away, if you don't have the discipline and understanding of the five-sided star, and if you only focus on your emotional security, that being an overly strong water emphasis. If you have a weak fire, life might be calling you to get out of your emotional security and try a little bit of living for courage. Try plumbing or prodding the edges of what your safety and security tend to cause you to isolate yourself from the world through. Mars's attentive effort and drive provide through Saturn Venus's contentment, satisfaction, and comfort in its own virtue and character. If you are only looking to heal yourself all the time with this Water Pancha Tattva, with this Cancer Sun or Libra Sun or Taurus Sun, if you're just all you want to do is make yourself feel comfortable, you might not be able to feel like you've expressed discipline or virtue. If you've got a weak Venus and you come into the Mars Dasha, life might be calling you to do the same thing, to be a bit more courageous and to use your primal. It might force you to be less accommodating to people. And if you've got a weak Venus, it's going to come out and it's going to be like, blah! Especially if you're used to being chill and being tranquil. Mars Dasha comes along, and if you've got a hurting Mars or a very malefic Mars, it's going to really wrap up this weak Water Pancha Tattva, and it could lay spikes for the rest of your life, So ground yourself in Venus. Don't let Mars overtake you too much. But ultimately, you should be aware that Mars is trying to teach you something positive. Water directs and sustains the charge of fire's energy. So you could do some great discipline. If these two are both balanced, you could do some great discipline work here, because Mars is driven to succeed and to express itself. And Venus has the capacity and the emotional connections with people to take the tension that Mars builds from its hard actions and to let it drift away in the peace of laughing with friends or being there to help a friend when they're in need. And, that's especially what might happen in this combination. Someone comes to the Venus person knowing that the Venus person is there to help them. The Venus person might have a million things going on, but the Mars in them, driven to have something that comes from the heart and a deep heartfelt connection to others, they might just say, you know what, especially with the ox. We're talking about the ox here. The ox in this situation will probably say, I got a lot going on, but yes, I won't get any sleep tonight, and I will sit and I will talk with you about your issue. And that can help. That can win huge things just with the faith and love and the all-dissolving power of Venus. So without Mars, one could live constantly seeking comforts and fulfillment. That's the Venus thing. So Mars should be seen as being useful to you there. Again, consider if you've got a very, if your Venus is whatever, but if you're in a Mars Dasha and you've got a very malefic Mars, you might not express the qualities of the Water Pancha Tattva, and that might only be temporary. So consider that. Now, we're coming along here, folks. Pretty soon we're going to start talking about the ox. But what I will say is that the sun is your mission in life. If you have sun, again, this is for the sun reading of Cancer, Libra, or Taurus. The sun is the solar system center whose energy powers your chart. The Pancha Tattva ruler of the sun sign can tell you much about yourself and what activities you tend to involve yourself in. This page, I want you to consider that the sun in active signs, meaning fire or air, in this case meaning Libra, these are more proactive and outgoing towards their Pancha Tattva directive. And then the sun in passive signs, which is Cancer and Taurus, they get on by patience, endurance, and depth regarding the themes of their Pancha Tattva. So while Libra might express itself, Libra ox might seem pretty different from Taurus and Cancer ox. It's dissolving, tension-bearing, usually comes from contracts to other people. So Libra, it's missing the Aries pole, and when Libra is having trouble and it has like a weak Mars or something, or a weak first house, Libra will tend to be so concerned with helping everybody else out because it's ruled by water, that especially if the Venus is in a weak place, then it will hurt itself, and it will do it in a way that just undermines themselves. But the point is that the water is like outside of Libra, whereas for Taurus and Cancer, the water tends to be on their own affairs. And they blend somewhere, you know. Now, we're almost out of the forest of me talking about these particular important things. I always like to say confluence is key. I'll give you a wrap around about this, but the Chinese sign affects some people more than others because the attributes of your Chinese sign sometimes compound the positive or negative attributes of your Western chart, especially the prominent emphasis, like if you've got a prominent water placement. There's no absolute formula for how these things work out. The ox does not technically, there's no book ever written where it talks about the ox and how it comes through Libra consciousness or Cancer or Taurus. So we're all pioneers in discovering how Chinese astrology relates with tropical astrology. So when a factor or a psychological factor is emphasized in the ox, the Chinese reading, and a similar factor is emphasized in the tropical horoscope, this is called confluence. And we're going to be looking for points of confluence between the ox is a very yin sign. It holds for others. It doesn't think too much of itself, although when its own needs are not met, it is like a bull. It's very similar to Taurus. So there is a lot of confluence between ox and these three signs. But the point is that it's the points of confluence of similar symbols which we seek as primary pillars in the chart, with which we can effect the greatest constructive transformations in the neurological field of the body and the mind. Meaning if you're too much of this ox water thing, you have to know when to pull it back. Or you have to know if you've got a lot of this Water Pancha Tattva in your chart, but you have like Mars in Leo rising, and the Mars is in Leo, and it's this grr personality, you're missing out on the capacity of your ox and of the Water Pancha Tattva. Everything in astrology should be patiently meditated upon in the full context of the self-realization totems which guide your path. Consider everything the holism of the chart whenever you consider a reading. Now, how we doing here, folks? Just going to take a quick hello, see if anybody's chatting with me. Okay. We've got some friends here. Renee's Cancer Sun, Pisces Moon, Capricorn Ascending. So this Cancer reading might you'll probably got a lot out of that bit, Renee. As for whether you're the sign of the ox, I'd love to know that if I can. Oh, you're a rabbit. No, a bastet in Egyptian chart. That's interesting. I haven't checked out the Egyptian astrology yet. Goosey, you would have to tell me your birthday. I don't remember what it is. Cool. Cool, good to hear, Renee. Goosey, I think your birthday was in, I think it's like close to the 29th of December or the 1st of January, around there. So I would think that your sign would be the rat, Goosey. But if you give me your birthday and I see it on here, I'll answer you and I'll let you know what your month branch would be. And to everybody else who's watching, thank you for watching. I always appreciate having more people than just myself talking to myself, although it happens all too often. Now, since we've given ourselves a decent backdrop understanding of what connects Cancer, Libra, and Taurus, and that's this Water Pancha Tattva. All three of these signs do their best when they're given the capacity to care, to resolve issues. When they are in business, people can depend on their ability generally to be friendly and to be a little bit passive and not too confrontational, generally. Although Libra can be confrontational, it's an active sign, but their confrontation, they consider it, whether this is true or not, it's another thing, but Libra considers it to be a small ruffle in order to still a bigger ruffle. A small jab in order to isolate a bigger problem. Like, for example, if you're in a family and Libra notices that two people aren't getting along, Libra comes along and tends to say, all right, guys, like, what's going on here? Like how they make an issue out of it and say, let's snuff this out so that you two can be, we can understand your mutual personalities and that you two can get along together. What do we got to do? That can be Libra's thing. And they can do it positively if they've got a positive expression of the Water Pancha Tattva and they know how to read emotions. Instead of, if you've got a weak Water Pancha Tattva and you're a Libra or you're a Taurus or you're a Cancer, you will tend to probably be a bit too passive and you won't be able to hold your own in business or what have you, or in family. Maybe a weak Water Pancha Tattva Taurus or Libra or Cancer might think, oh, I want to balance my love for my two children, and this one's acting up, so I'm going to love this one more, and then it has this weird favoritism that they didn't mean to do because they were thinking too logically about it. These are the kind of things that we have to consider when we're dealing with the Water Pancha Tattva. But essentially they get off what they get the most out of life through. They get the most out of this emotionality, this capacity to hear the other person and to resolve issues when dealing with other people in business or in work or whatever. That's why they make good healers, good aestheticians. Cancer in particular, Cancer and Taurus can just be good like self-contractors, and especially with the ox. Okay, now let's start talking about what the ox brings to Libra, Cancer, and Taurus. First, I should say, the science of Chinese astrology is pretty new and untouched in the history of Western esotericism. And even in the Vedic tradition, the Vedic people just have never touched this particular Chinese thing. And it has to do with the Chinese sense of the body and spirit, Jing, Qi, Shen. It's the body, the mental energy, and then the spirit. It's just a different limb of the neurosphere of the body. And all of this is a lot of this, just keep in mind. I am going to note my sources, but this is me talking about my sources and me paraphrasing it through the Dustin Cormier ideology that I'm building for myself. That teacher in particular is the one and only Master Zongsheng Wu. I don't think I ever pronounce his name correctly. Zongsheng Wu. I've got his. I went to his retreat, one of his retreats, and I got his signature, and I'm super proud of that. This is a book that he wrote, talking about the heavenly stems and the earthly branches. We're going to be reading readings from other authors, but I contend mostly to the tradition and lineage of Master Zongsheng Wu. And if anybody is interested in where I'm getting a lot of my information, of course, it's coming through me. I never really do anything word for word. But if you're interested, if you see where I'm going with all this and you go, I wonder where he got it. Master Zongsheng Wu and his wife, Dr. Karen Taylor Wu. Yeah. I guess I should say Master Zongsheng Wu, this book in particular, this Tiangan DZ book, has been blessed and accepted, considered as acceptable by the president of the Chinese Taoist Association, Grandmaster Ren Farong. Of course, it's just good to note lineage. Now we're going to start talking about the ox. These 6 points are my own idea, my own derivation of what makes up the qualities that we see expressed as the nature of the animal sign, the ox. I would say that there's 6 of them, and we're going to talk about those 6 as we go along. First, I want to just talk about the ox a little bit. Just, some bare bones basic observations of the ox. Ox's deepest limb of expression is Ji, which is the heavenly stem of yin earth. It's its primary energetic body. When you talk to an ox, you're talking with somebody who acts from their spleen and pancreas in a strong way. Whereas Jia, the heavenly stem Jia, which is yang wood, tends to correlate with the brain, with a more cerebral and even sort of overarching spiritual mentality, for better or worse. Jia talks about prenatal knowledge. So Jia people just kind of tend to go by what they feel is the nature of things. The ox, being ruled by Ji, which rules the spleen and pancreas, they kind of roll with like a gut instinct, which is kind of different, at least in the Chinese sense. It seems like they're both going by a gut instinct, and by that metaphor, the ox and, for example, the tiger, who's kind of ruled by Jia, they kind of do both go by that gut instinct. But the ox's is different. The ox loves to slowly digest things. It gets into something and it really roves all of its consciousness and its mind around the thing and sees how that thing relates to its life. It goes by an earth sort of consciousness. It's in the metal triad. The metal harmony triad are called the thinkers. So not only does the ox kind of go by feel, it's got its own funny intuition, the ox. I would say, is that its earthy intuition is a stem of its thinking and its analysis. The ox is considered in the metal triangle, which we're going to talk about. And those in the metal triangle are always thinkers. They analyze, they look way down the line of whatever it is that they're dealing with. And they go by that analysis. It's an earthy thing that they do. And the ox is the earthiest of the three. You definitely have to consider that. For better or worse. The ox is more empathic and emotionally aware than the snake and the rooster are. Snake and rooster, snake has some of that emotionality, but the ox also has water as a secondary earth branch. So this is the ox is the metal triangle type who also understands emotions and can feel people and can deal in the immediate vicinity. Where a rooster would come along and just think, forget this emotional crap. Just look, guys, we got our friggin' numbers and we got to do what we got to do. That's why rooster and ox make great companions, because the ox says to rooster, do it, go, where we got to go. And the ox can take rooster's discipline, and rooster will go bang, 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 right down to the crispest, like rooster's pure shin, and that's the yin metal. And rooster will just get right down to the thought, the analytical needs of everybody, regardless of emotions. Ox can take it and say, okay, I'll deliver the message in a way that people can digest. That is hugely a part of the ox's great capacity. And when we consider the ox with the Pancha Tattva of water, you're going to notice that there's a deep emphasis on the ox reducing the emotionality of the Water Pancha Tattva ruler, so that, for example, a Cancer ox is emotional, understands the emotional sphere, and wants to have a family usually. They want to be in that emotional sphere, but they know how to do what's best in the analytical, logical long run for everything. And they will have the discipline. Cancer will find ways of having loving connections with people to keep them that watery feeling of no matter what happens, no matter how much their hard oxness delineates and delegates what has to be done, whether in a business or in a family or in a partnership, the Cancer will stop it from being so stern that it misses on the connections, the emotional connections with people. Conversely, the ox makes sure that Cancer doesn't get so dependent on its emotional connections that it can't keep its own job. The ox will keep the job first and will keep itself solid. The ox is the bottom of we can see it's in sort of like the bottom aspiring of the ascending chi. So ox tends to be aware that it has to have a root in its own ground before it can best express the love which Cancer or which Libra or Taurus wants to express. Usually ox will help that happen no matter how bad the placement of the Water Pancha Tattva ruler is. Which can be frustrating. Someone with like a Cancer ascendant with the moon in Cancer in the ascendant will probably think, gosh, I wish I wasn't such an ox all the time. But maybe they're underselling a part of their personality that's more important than they think, with the ox, for example. So we're going to go through the attributes of the ox, just so we can get a better sense of what it is that the ox is. The first is its position in the solstice versus solstice. Ox is on the ascending side, which means ox usually takes rat's advice in like some good things that are starting. And ox tends to be a slow, patient initiator. They like to experience a lot of life and in their own slow, capable, they're at the bottom, right? They're the second part of this, where snake is the fullest ascending chi. Ox is only just starting in the ascending chi. So they like to initiate things, They're like a spring vibe in this sort of sense. And they like to digest lots of parts of the world and take the best from all their digestion and think, maybe I could start my own little business doing this. That's why when ox and snake get together, ox likes to build things and to see all these little business prospects and say, okay, I'm starting to get a feel for which is the best. The snake will ask the ox, what is the best? Because the snake just wants to get fully put all of its chips in a fixed yang way through an analytically processed business which has been digested by somebody already. So the ox curdles the milk until there's this cream, and then the snake comes along and says, I want that cream that has been pre-digested by you. And the ox and the snake, you know, if the snake trusts the ox enough and the ox does well with that, the ox can continue doing that for the snake with whatever business they get going on. So this is an example of this ascending-descending thing. Number 2 is numerical yin or yang. Ox is numerical yin, and this coincides with all the yin that we saw in its hidden stems. It's yin earth, yin metal, yin water. Not always, though. For example, horse is in the yang side, but it's yin fire. So these are just layers and modalities that finally express through what we see as the animal. In the same way that we mentioned about the Pancha Tattvas, when you hear somebody talking about, like, for example, the year of the ox in one of the many Western translated descriptions of the year of the ox, like on Chinese menus, they say the ox is like this and like this. And you say, how do they know? Why is the ox like that? This is part of why. Not only where they are in this cycle, but also where they are. They're numerical yin or yang. So ox is very yin. Ox is one of the most yin signs in the whole shebang, in the whole Chinese astrology cycle. The third attribute is the modality, and we're going to see that this is eventually what brings on the big picture, which is the energetic yin and yang. But we know modalities from the Western signs. Say there's all the mutable signs like Sagittarius, Virgo, Gemini, and Pisces. Those are 4 signs of a similar vibe. Same thing with the fixed signs, although the Chinese symbols have different ways of describing cardinal, fixed, and mutable. This is a little bit Dustin Cormier here. This is me trying to find and organize the modalities of the Chinese signs in a logical way. And we'll notice, for example, with the energetic yin and yang, the cardinal signs are, like when we see that the ox, the ox is yin earth, it has to do with the fact that it's a yin sign it's an earth sign rather, and it is one of the yin earth signs. There's 4 cardinal earth signs. 2 of them are yin and 2 of them are yang. If you want to know more about why those are, feel free to check out my Chinese Tropical Astrology explanation. I believe episode 2, I go into the qualities of the animal signs in greater detail. So not to lose you, let's keep the thread here. Just understand that the ox is a yin sign. It's one of the 4 earth signs. Now the 4 earth signs, they behave similarly because they're all cardinal. They're all 4 of them are on the same cardinal points of the horoscope. So they have a similar vibration, but in different neurological directions. They are interested in the same way of dealing with reality, but through different elemental fixations. So ox tends to have strained relationships with the goat especially, obviously, but also with dog and dragon, because they're all earth. They all think about what's going on in the now, except that they all think that they're looking at the same object in a different way. And sometimes they even think that they're looking at a different object, even though they're both just looking at the reality through their subjective mindset. They're all trying to crystallize reality in a way that everyone can understand. So Ox comes in and says, well, what we're dealing with is this way. And Dragon comes in and says, well, you must be blind, because what I see is that the reality is expressing itself this way. And they both could be right or wrong in certain ways, right? What can be sure is that they'll probably have a bit of strain. And it's good. It would be good for them to try to see from the other's perspective, because as Chinese astrology teaches us, we're best when we are compensating for each other's natures and absorbing that which in the other person we do not have in ourselves, because we're all stronger when we're helping each other's brighten up each other's shadows. So, is this energy helpful and complementary, or does it overdo the balance for the Pancha Tattva? Well, obviously, it's funny that Ox's yinness, it's more earth yin. While it does have the water in it, it's in the winter thing, and it does account for emotions deeply, actually. Its emotional connections are an important thing to it. Although, when you're dealing with the Ox emotionally, it almost just seems like they're aware of the emotional factor, but their logical minds just say, honey, I love you so much, but I can't keep taking you to the movies, because we just can't afford it right now, and and that kind of thing. There is a potential with all of this yin energy to make oneself, with an Ox with Cancer, Taurus, or Libra, this could be a very stay-at-home personality, which is not as adventurous as it might want to be. This could be a personality whose only concern is just to make sure that everything is good at home, or at least even has the illusion of being good at home, especially if there's a water, if you're a Libra or a Taurus or a Cancer, and your moon is in a sign that's not conducive to the expression of that emotion. Like if you've got Venus in Aries, for example, this person could just be annoyingly concerned with having emotional resolution and feeling secure. This, a person with Venus in Aries might just go and get a Venus in Aries might be a little bit too hot-headed for what the Ox subconsciously is trying to do. An Ox with Libra Sun does well with business contracts, and it goes, and that's how a big part of its energy. It goes and says to people, I can listen to you, I can be passive, and I can deal with you in business and listen to you instead of just being super hard. But then the Venus in Aries of that person, let's say it comes along and says, it's in my better logical interest to put my emotional connections here now instead, because I just met this new fucking good-looking wife who's just this new thing, and it makes me feel even better. So sorry I made that diplomatic connection with you. I'm going to have to break this promise and go towards what my Venus and Aries instinct tells me. And if they keep doing that, they're not going to get a very good name for themselves. Now again, Ox usually will prevent that, though. Ox will generally close up the tie with that relationship partner before making his name too much mud. So this, ultimately, I would say that these energies are mostly complementary. The emotionality of Taurus, of Libra, or of Cancer are a welcoming awareness of the emotional sphere, which can stop the Ox from being a little bit too dry. The Taurus ox is one where one ought to be, it's double ox. It's an ox and a bull. So always keep in mind that the Taurus ox could be a little bit dry as well and self-concerned, because it's the Venus Taurus in it is telling it that it is your security and stability that will carry you through life's trials, and you can't trust anybody but your own dedication to building up in that second house way a concrete foundation for whatever empire you try to build. So much so that the Ox Taurus person might never make important contracts with people. It's afraid of the Scorpio pole to be absorbed by whatever their contracts entail. But usually the Taurus ox will figure out that their Venusian nature does better when working with other people and being diplomatic. In fact, that will probably be a part of their reputation, that second house Taurus reputation that they're trying to build and impress on people, is that they have the capacity to be strong in themselves and to think logically, and ultimately to be receptive to the desires of their workers or whatever, because ultimately they're a water type. As a boss, bodes well for the ox, and the ox's energetic body. The yin earth of the ox, which goes by its gut instinct, will usually, it's an earthy gut instinct, not an emotional one. Keep in mind, though, that if the ox gets into the habit of living by gut instinct, and they have a little bit of a messed up Water Pancha Tattva, and they have an emphasis on the Water Pancha Tattva, they may mistake their gut instinct wisdom, which is usually analytical and based on numbers. The ox might think with its gut, and if it's young and it hasn't had enough experience, it might be too emotional. It might allow itself to be stricken. It might allow the logic of the ox, which is part of ox's big strength. If the gut instinct, being ruled by the spleen and pancreas of the yin earth of the ox, if they live by that so much that they lose the discernment between their emotions and their logic, they might go with their gut, they might think emotionally, and they might lose the capacity to do something that they could have done a lot better with. The only example I can think of is, for example, like if an ox has the ability to start a business, but it has a lover who wants to move to like France, and the ox says, I've got to think emotionally and go and move with them to France, even though I've got this opportunity here. It could happen because their gut instinct says, I've got to live by the Water Pancha Tattva, which means I've got to go and do this thing, for better or worse. These are the kind of themes that ox is probably going to be dealing with a lot. Am I thinking logically right now, or am I thinking with too much emotion towards this thing? They're always trying to find that balance, and they're good at it, usually, especially once they get older. So then there's the hidden stems. We've already talked a little bit about those. And we're going to talk about the element triad now. I like to think that with regards to other people, the ox, the element triad is a deep, deep running stem in the animal personality. And it is what connects them to other social spheres, so they can build a feng shui network which is conducive to something that they're deeply good at and they love to do. In the ox's case, it's that analytical, logical thinking. The long-run analysis, which keeps them from being too emotional. If the Cancer ox, if we've got a Cancer or Libra or Taurus ox, they will do very well with usually any rooster or snake, because they will be the ones that are hard and part of the metal thinking and analysis. They see the logic of the rooster or the snake, but when those two partners start going at it, the Water Pancha Tattva comes out of the ox. Even though they're all knowing that they got to work this shit out, the ox comes in and says, okay, let's not cut our heads off and say anything that's going to ultimately soil this perfect triangle. Let's think logically, but let's also not be too rude or hasty to each other. But ultimately, the ox is very logical. And that's what we're going to get into with their element triad. We see there's the ox, the snake, and the rooster are all in the metal triad. That's why they're gray in there. Disclaimer, in certain Western texts, the harmony triads are incorrectly labeled due to an improper inference from the signs that correlate with the Western zodiac. There are some texts which suggest that since rat resonates with Sagittarius, since Leo resonates with monkey, and since dragon resonates with Aries, those are the fire triad in astrology. So they say that the dragon and rat and monkey are all in the fire triangle. But that fire nature comes from a Western translation that just has absolutely nothing to do with Chinese astrology. My inference comes from Master Zhongseng Wu, from his book Tiangan DZ. And that is where I get my correlation of this triad with the metal element. Because when they get together, they express the policing metal energy and that purifying straight business mentality of the metal energy. Now, this says what I just said. Feel free to pause this and read through it. It's just me putting some fancy language into it all. What we will say is that the partners in your shared harmony triad, in this case that's ox, snake, ox, rooster, and snake. These partners represent people who are psychically building the same kind of feng shui social network that you are, and so they harmonize well with you. It brings out the luck and cosmic swing of your subconscious nature to analyze and to be a good thinker. Snake and rooster get along well with that. So the harmony triads are the primary grouping in Chinese astrology, at least where behavioral psychology is concerned. You note the harmony triad, you understand what social cause that the three of them are going for, and then what you think of is how the ox, what the ox does to bring and to complement these two. And then finally on top of that, we would add like what the Water Pancha Tattva ox might add to this sort of triangle. It's a lot of things, but I think astrology would be more, it would make less sense if astrology were completely simple, because humans are not simple, nor do we want them to be. Mind you, the more simple you can make all of these, that's why I added the note of confluence. The more you can see the simple, basic pillars in a combination, the more sense you can make of it, and there is always that simplicity there. But essentially, in my opinion, once you start to get a grasp of all these layers, you'll start to see the important pillars that bleed through each sign combination. And it's better that those are there rather than astrology being simple and easy, in my opinion. Is that making sense, folks? I think I'm going to go to the bathroom in a moment. I just want to see what everyone's saying. Just as I thought, the 29th of December. I believe my friend Misty Kochian here might be asking for the symbols of these two dates. Unfortunately, one of those is born on the 8th, and if anybody is born between the 6th and the 8th, I'm gonna say your sign in one sec, Goosey. In terms of Miss Misty, we have somebody born October 8th, 1976. Since they're born on the 8th, that's the cusp point, so I wouldn't know. You would have to look up your astrology, say, on Master Wu's. There's a good site called Master Tsai, Tsai, where it can tell you your chart. Because since it's on the cusp, I don't know if you're in the sign of the dog or the sign of the boar. The 76, though, would be, let's see, 91 is the goat, 79 is the goat, 78 is the horse, 77 is the snake, so 76 is the dragon. So 76 would be the fire dragon. As for this person born on September, January, February, March, April, May, June 25th, that person is probably the sign of the goat on their month, and 82 is, let's see, goat is 79, so monkey is 80, rooster is 81, so dog is 82, I believe. So that person would be like goat, dog. And Goosey, since you asked, yours would be the rat. Looks like these are flipping around now. But so yeah, your month branch, Goosey, would be the rat, and I believe you're in the year of the snake, and I'm not sure what your day would be. Again, this is a community thing, so that's why I do try to answer questions when I can. But I think that it might be in my better Goosey, I wanted to answer you because you asked, because you're such a supporter of my work. But generally, I don't think it's good for me to just, okay, you're asking, this person is this person is this. I suggest looking up Master Tsai, it's Tsai, if you want to get a look at your 5-pillar chart. Now, I'm going to go to the bathroom for a moment, folks, and we are going to continue talking about the water-ruled ox. Okay. Thanks for your patience, ladies and gentlemen. Moving right along. Let's see. Feel free, if anybody's watching, to leave a comment and to ask any questions as you see fit. Oh, cool. I guess I can always see these down here. My friend, it seems my friend Michelle Lopez has said, love your videos, super informative and in-depth. Thank you very much, Michelle. Now, I wonder why I can see them on my YouTube, but not... Ah, there we go. Thank you, Michelle. I deeply appreciate it. Thank you for making your comment and being a part of our community. Now, as I said, the triad is the deep running torrent of behavioral psychology in the animal signs. And you've got to know what your animal sign's metal triad is interested in living by, and also how the particular animal acts and compensates for its friends and its neighboring friends in its triangle, in order to really get a grasp for what it is that your animal sign really is, and its intentions, and what its nature is. The second triangle of affinity is made up of 3 pragmatic metal branches called the thinkers. They are the 2nd, 6th, and 10th branches, known respectively as the ox, the snake, and the rooster. People of this trio are purposeful and reflective in their thinking. Reflective, that's a great word for metal. They value intellectual prowess and didactic thinking. Analytical, didactic, I believe, means like looking at things with black and white contrasts. They are gifted with superior intelligence and the ability to sort things out calmly. They are the planners and schemers who plot the course for others to follow. The personalities of the metal triad are noted for their thoroughness and steadfast dedication. Their perseverance and self-sacrifice will inspire others to perform above their ability. This is great for a Cancer, Taurus, or Libra personality who most people tend to think of as just... There are different types of leaders, you know? And it's always nice when you have an ox person who has Cancer, Libra, or Taurus, because they will tell everybody and delegate and say, well, everybody, you guys understand that logically this is what we have to do in this business, or this is what we have to do in this work, you know? Work in a construction yard. Ox Taurus says, well, everybody, we know that we have to put we have to hammer the nails in this particular way. It hurts a little bit more on your body, but this is how we logically have to do it, right? Now, anybody can go along and just lead like that, but it'll usually be a Cancer or a Taurus or Libra ox who will actually, look, it's like this, and he'll work just as hard, you know, bang, bang. They will work to show everybody that how to lead. They will lead in that way, in their own quiet sort of like way. And their self-sacrifice will inspire others to perform above their ability. It's very much an ox thing. They are visionaries of the cycle. They are confident in their own analytical powers, and they will have a strong perception of how things could and should be done. Unswayed by public opinion, they are known to be unyielding and resolute in outlook, and will outwit or outmaneuver their opponents with their calm but formidable powers. It's a beautiful thing because, I mean, if you're the wife or if you're the lover of this person, they will have an open door to be receptive and to communicate with you, which is a beautiful thing. But Cancer or Libra or Taurus tend to be too much of that, or in Taurus's case, maybe not enough of that. But the ox is a balancing element, so that when if you have this person as a lover, it's easy to be afraid, oh, they're so emotional, I hope they don't have trouble in business. But you can be sure with an ox that even though they're receptive and lovely in bed with you when you're lying and doing the Venus and Cancer thing, when they go out into the world, they will still keep you safe because they're running by logic. They will cuddle and snuggle and they'll love and they'll kiss and they'll say, honey, I got to wake up in the morning. You know, so this is great, but I got to wake up and I got to go to work. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful combination, really. The metal triad are the most determined thinkers who will slowly but surely reach their goals by unwavering tenacity and constancy of purpose. To work with them, one must learn to appreciate their analytical and cerebral abilities and appeal to their intelligence and practical side. Ain't that the truth? My mother is in the year of the ox, and she, if you don't respect her and contend with her at an intellectual level and you just try to push away whatever she's thinking, she's going to say, no, hold on, we were just looking at some data. No, you got to listen to this. And she'll be like, she'll grab your face and say, here's the data. I love my mom to pieces, so I can bug her like that. But of course, if you ever have known anybody with this vibration, you'll know that it's a deep, deep blessing to work with them, because they're so resolute about the things that they express that there's no illusions with them. You know, they're just going to say, here's my logical opinion on this situation. Sorry, here it is. And you don't really have to ever feel like they're holding anything back. Now, this reading also is not just for ox, but also for rooster and snake. Rooster and snake will be more logical about hiding their face and only delivering certain data. You know, how's that phrase go? Like, don't talk about it unless it needs to be talked about, that kind of vibe. Ox tends to just be, and ox can do that too, but they don't generally like to keep secrets. They are just an open book, usually. Though they can if they need to. So, what you have to do when working with this triad, you show them how they will benefit in a rational, systematic, well thought out plan. When you're dealing with them, if you're going to ask them in business or anything, you got to show them systematically the whole way down of your idea. If you can't do that, then they'll think that you haven't put in the research, the analysis, and the investment, and they won't be that interested. All contingencies must be addressed and provided for, as these folks are great believers in having other options and do not like surprises or sudden changes, for better or worse. If you tell them you've got this whole plan that's just perfect right down to this certain point, but then you say to them, now when we get here, we have to cross a bridge, and I haven't checked the stability of that bridge, but I think we'll make it. All of that whole train of perfection, as soon as it gets to that point where if there's no other way around that particular bridge, they're not going to be like, well, we're not going to get a whole caravan pushed to this edge of this cliff and then get there and the bridge is broken. I'm not going to waste my time with that. That's the way these people think. You got to show them that the whole thing is worked out, and they're going to dig. They're going to dig to make sure that that's true for themselves. Especially for the Pancha Tattva Lord of Venus, because these people take promises very seriously, because it's a deep devotional thing for them. If they promise their son that you're going to go to college no matter what, if they say to their son, I promise that I will have the money to put you through college because I've got this solid, they wouldn't make a promise unless they have a solid job with promised income in a structured way, or else they wouldn't make that promise to their kid. So the Cancer ox says to the son, you can be sure that you can depend on me not to get messed up in any business, which might squander your capacity to go to college like I promised that you could. And then a businessman comes along and says, hey, I've got this, you've got this solid job, but why don't you come with me, invest this money in my thing, and you might make even more money, and you might even be able to do better than get your son through college. You'll be able to buy a house for him because you're going to get rich. The ox, especially because the Cancer in him has made the promise to the son, the ox is going to say, you better show me like 50 years down the road what this is going to look like. You better show me 10 years what it's going to look like. You better show me tomorrow that this is not going to fail. And if there's any cracks in that, I'm going to stick with what has been giving me the capacity to promise my son all these things, right? The Venus in them will be nice about it, and if they're emotionally well attuned too. So the ox, the Cancer or Libra or Taurus ox is good at business contracts, and they have a keen eye for what's going to go down, especially because Venus, remember we said, Venus is a lord of the earth. We can deeply find some confluence here between the fact, if you remember we said from Ernst Wilhelm's description of the Graha Sutras, that Venus people are lords of the earth and they have a very good sense of human material workings. This is coming through the ox or anyone else in the metal triad. This is deeply, deeply confluent and informative. Mind you, if they've got this Water Pancha Tattva emphasis and they assume themselves to be a lord of the earth, and the ox does as well, they can become a little bit too crystallized in that material world sense, and they might even just get a little bit spiritually locked up. The water tends to be good at not getting locked up, but if you've got a big Water Pancha Tattva emphasis, it means that you're generating Mercury in the Pancha Tattvas. I wonder if we can just you're generating Earth in the Pancha Tattvas. So the Venus in you has a very deep sense of how human affairs work, how Earth and the things of Earth works. Come on, bugger. So the ox has the capacity to see into human affairs and into business and into diplomatic relations and into emotions, and they can see into people, and they can mostly, though, sorry, I said the ox. Let me rephrase. Cancer, Taurus, and Libra have a very good sense of people, of how the world works. And of the changing emotions that I was talking about, which eventually lead up to a solid Earth. It's like mixing concrete or something like that. If you don't mix it, it's all going to be runny and chunky. The water knows how to keep it mixing up so that when it finally does settle, it's very solid because it's gone through the knowledge of all these twists and turns. So Venus-ruled people, or Cancer, Libra, and Taurus, are a lord of the earth who have the capacity to have a good business sense. They've learned it from dealing with the demons in themselves, especially in Taurus's case. Taurus just learns how to discipline itself to keep itself going, and it also knows how other people need it too. So when Taurus makes a business, especially through the ox, Taurus ox will know how to keep the business going on the ox side and say, when people come to them, the ox knows, sorry, but I cannot give you this loan because I have to keep my own business going and I don't like what I'm looking at. But the Taurus will say, sorry it didn't work out for you. You still have a position here, and feel free to hang out in the air-conditioned room for a minute and digest what the problem is, and these sorts of things. They'll make sure that their workers are well tended to in the senses and in the atmosphere. And to feel like they can trust the ox. There's a deep, Taurus and ox can make a deep feeling of trust because once they trust you, they've seen that you've dealt with your own demons and that you know how to positively go forward. They'll learn, the Taurus ox will learn about your nature, and they will cater to whatever it is that you need to bring them in the long run, to bring you to give the best to Taurus ox's company. They will learn your personal little jigs and jags because they've seen it in themselves. And they will learn what makes you go best, and they will accommodate for it, so long as it doesn't hurt ox's time or ox's wallet. They're good at finding that medium. So is Libra. Libra is very much the same thing. Libra reads what people like. Libra is less about this enduring thing and more about just instantly in the moment reading people and executing a contract that says you're really going to like this because you've met this person, and Libra deals more that way. And Cancer is more about Cancer ox is more about trying things out for itself. Cancer builds off of Gemini, Gemini is this wild mental thing that just is super curious, and Cancer opens its heart to being able to try out a million different things. So Cancer will probably be the first out of this whole group to just go out and stick out on its own in a business. Just they've learned all they need from school. They tend to be especially if the Cancer is strong, if the moon is strong. The moon's in a good relationship with the sun. The fourth house often relates with education. It's like the long run education. So Cancer will develop and fortify an identity for itself in a certain field of education, will discipline themselves to keep going in that, and then they'll just start getting their toe in they're putting their finger in every pie and seeing, okay, this is what this business is like, okay, this is kind of cool, but they won't fully engage with it. And Cancer will do that until they get the sense. It's like a crab, a crustacean that has 8 legs and goes in all these ways, and eventually it develops a shell for itself. It learns what it needs and does best with in the world. So Cancer, in the same way, is that watery, accommodating energy. And Cancer, because of its experience, it's a different experience than Venus. Venus has an experience with itself, like Taurus and Libra, knows what it likes and knows what other people like. And it also has that business world lord sense, Lord of the Earth sense. The moon is more of just like this experience-based thing. And Cancer, Ox will travel, usually. They like to keep their own circuit going on, but maybe they might not necessarily travel. But they will certainly be compelled by the cardinal Cancer action to try lots of different things, while also trying to keep their emotional ties in check. And if the moon is strong and if the sun is strong, they will be guided and compelled towards having experiences in their field, and that experience will stand the test of time more than the logic in a book might, for example. These people tend to be guided by, again, the gut instinct, as well as the water types tend to find something that they deeply love and submit to it, whatever that thing might be, whether it's a mechanic, an ox who's like interested in being a mechanic. They will move all the things in their life in order to just get themselves into that thing, into that field that they identify with, and they will develop, like a crab, a holding container for how to learn by experience and their own lived knowledge of how to adapt in that field. And the ox, of all the three of these, the ox particularly caters to this experience, this trying different things. The ox, because it's got the earth in it and the water in it. It's not just metal like these guys are, although snake has earth in it too. Snake and ox both kind of swiggle around and try lots of different things, but probably the ox more than the other two. Ox will put itself in a position maybe as like a career guidance counselor who can hear what someone's interests are and then explain to them in their emotional Water Pancha Tattva way why they think this person might do well with this field. Or, Ox is a good executive and talks with different people in various realms of the field of construction, for example. Ox makes a good contractor who knows all the different parts of the business and can subsume them all into one contract, and then goes and says, this will be a contract for this and this will be a contract for this. Snake and rooster more tend to be like guys who maybe take the executive decision of the ox. Snake will be the best mechanic or the best construction worker in town because they've so deeply fixated on one thing. And rooster will just can work for these two as someone who... Rooster's more about getting other people to work in the moment. And can kind of be a hard ass, like, get in there, put that shovel in that dirt. That's more of the rooster thing. Snake likes to lay back and go things on its own way and purpose, and snake will work very hard in there by itself. It's the rooster is the one out of all these three that loves to that's good at telling people what to do, just for the sake of the fact that it's what needs to be done. Ox will do that, but in a sort of nicer way. They don't like to have to fire people, you know. Ox, especially Water Pancha Tattva ox, is just too emotional to have to tell someone that they're fired because they're not doing well enough. Although, if it comes down to the fact that this person is messing with their business, and, you know, let's say we've got, again, like a Taurus ox or a Libra ox. You know, the Libra ox wants to go to live with his family in Spain soon, but they're still stuck here with this business, and this person comes along and shows the ox that the ox knows that this person's not ultimately helping their company. The Libra in them has a contract with their family saying, I promise to get home to you guys as soon as possible. So the Libra is going to come through, and it's going to come through the strength of the ox, and the ox will have no trouble cutting that person out, because they're being guided by deeper contracts than just this person, and this person is not delivering what they promised on. So good luck to you, sir, and you're always welcome to consider us in further ventures or whatever. You know, they won't be too hard about doing it, about firing that person. So we see that there's a hard yin earth solidity to the ox, and it's analytical because it's in the metal triad. And the Water Pancha Tattva makes it all smooth. It's like a hardness within, but a smooth capacity to deal with whatever problems happen on the surface. That's what I wanted to consider all of this with the Pancha Tattva Lord, the water. Now, due to the metal triad people, due to their strong dislike of failure or weakness, these people can be ruthless when thwarted or misled. Especially, again, if there's a deep connection in what they're doing to loved ones or to something that they've devoted themselves to with the Water Pancha nature. If the ox finds that you're screwing him over and he has devoted himself to something higher, even something religious or whatever, they will be zealous. And they will be like, whoops, I woke up the ox and I shouldn't have, you know, don't poke that bear. So, for those in the metal triangle, be careful to explain all issues before embarking on any enterprise, because these personalities will not forgive you if you leave loose ends or fail to anticipate all the possibilities. In the end, they will depend on their own astute assessment of facts, and in decision-making, they will opt to follow their heads rather than their hearts. It's a very good thing, because a Libra ox, for example, has the capacity to trust you because I know you. And there's something good that can be said about that trust. When the Libra ox can lean on somebody to do the job and go and get it done, they don't have to do that now. That saves them energy to do the things that they're better at. And so they can trust people because the Libra has the open heart and capacity to trust. But only so far as the head of the ox says it's ultimately okay to trust this person. They've proven it through the numbers and they'll do well with it. The Libra in particular, the sun doesn't do well in Libra. You typically, in a certain understanding, and if you've got a weak sun, if you're getting hit by malefics on the sun, and you've got the sun in Libra, you might feel the tension between this trust and, you know, you as a Libra, like Libra likes to work smarter, not harder. So the Libra ox might say, this person might just make it easier for me to not have to deal with this part of reality so that I can do what I'm good at. So the Libra ox might delegate and trust somebody, and they might do it a little bit too fast, especially if the sun wants to get glory now rather than later. So the sun coming through Libra will say, hell yeah, let's make that diplomatic relation just so we can get this thing bigger, so that the Venus can turn the wheel, and that I have the mutual swing of my business partner, and yeah, let's get it going on. And in that desire to get that going, the ox could get deeply, deeply unsettled. The Libra ox, by making just any willy-nilly connection, the ox, for what it's worth, the ox's yin earth, like if they make a business contract like that, the ox could get ulcers, if anybody can, because they feel the earth underneath the mental connection that they've made with that person. You know, so they trust the person with the keys to the building, and they think, you know, they could give, the Libra could say, well, we're in a partnership together, so of course I've afforded you and promised you that I would give you the keys to the vehicle or to the building, and as a business associate, I have to do my part and trust you. So, and the ox knows by experience that you do trust people, because the Libra knows that that's a good thing to do. That really gets wheels spinning. But if the ox, in this solar desire to succeed, trusts a person a little too much and gives them the keys, and then the ox says, okay, I'm going on vacation. They go on vacation, and they spend the whole time holding their stomach like, oh God, I really hope that I didn't just fuck myself by doing that. And they'll never be able to relax. This is a common thing for Libra ox, is that they get totally gut hurt because the Libra in them caused them to make a business decision due to the fact that it was needed in the moment, and they're receptive, and they're Libra. They're not Aries, right? So they're Libra, and they get off. Part of the swing of what they are is that people know that they'll just wheel and deal like that. And they wheel and deal, and they do the thing, and ox's yin earth being just below the rib cage, they'll have like deep like feelings of like indigestion and spleen and pancreas, and they'll be overworked trying to just calm the ox down. And these people could, in the end of things, if none of their business contracts ever go right, this person will get ulcers, and they'll just be a worrisome mess, because the ox needs that foundation. The nature of ox to need a logical foundation can work against it if it doesn't cater to it. Just like the need to be emotional and to be Libra and to make connections with people is inherent in this person. But if the ox is so stubborn and never allows them to try that, they're missing out on this wheel and deal nature, which Libra's so good at, right? So just consider the strength of the planet in question. Even consider, you know, when you look in a Ba-Z chart, if ox is the symbol that you're thinking of, but if you're a person who has lots of wood, the wood in your chart might take away from your ability to be solid. It might make you just faithfully do more of this like Libra thing. Somewhere down along the line, you're going to be holding your stomach with worry because you've got so much outside of your analytical, logical process that you prefer to work by. So it's compensatory for sure. Libra, Taurus, and Cancer with this watery vibration. I think it is ultimately compensatory. It compensates for the overly stable nature of the ox. But you will have to learn to blend your ability to just wheel and deal and to make these contracts. Taurus is it's less about the wheeling and dealing in that way. It's more about knowing what I need, which means Taurus can shut itself off. Especially Taurus ox can be very stubborn and shut itself off from the capacity to be this wheeler dealer. But ultimately, if people trust that Taurus ox is doing well because of the slow, meticulous effort they've put towards their little thing, Taurus ox can open up to looking at people and saying, you know, if you want to deal with me, you can check out my record, and it's friggin' spotless because I've learned how to keep myself in check and to discipline myself to build towards these things. And then Cancer tends to be more of the experience by faith and devotional surrender to whatever the identity is that they're going for. Whether it's a business person, entrepreneur, whether it's like anything. You know, they tend to really try out for themselves, for their own experience, what the field is like that they're interested in getting into. And from their handheld experience on the reality, they build a deeper sense of what this detail stems from. You know, which boss tells this person what to do. Then they become that boss and they become the supervisor. They learn why the supervisor deals with the ground people in a certain way, and they just build themselves from the ground up. And they do it stably because the ox tends to remain stable. These are all factors that we have to consider when we're looking for the confluent factors that make up the ox ruled by a Water Pancha Tattva. Let's see if we've got some people saying some things about some things. Of course, I always say you're always welcome to feel free to make a comment and we'll check her out. Thank you, Michelle, for listening. Paulette's Magical Heart. Thank you so much, Paulette, for engaging in the conversation. Now, Goosey, you're asking, is my animal commander my zodiac sign, or is it something else? The animal commander is the month branch. Whatever I said for you, I believe it's the rat. So that commander, that's your commander. It's the month branch, the animal which is on your month branch. And it is its own zodiac sign, Goosey. It's its own sign. It's a part of your personality. And it helps to express, it's the way that, for example, I believe you're in the year of the snake. And the year of the snake in you expresses itself through the rat. And also, it expresses itself through the day pillar and the day stem. Thank you so much, everybody, for making your comments. Always feel free to comment and to add to our discussion today. Now, when combining the philosophy of the two, I'm just going to give you guys a quick sense of this. You can feel free to pause and read the whole thing. Since I am a Vedic astrologer overall, my bias is towards Vedic astrology being the keystone to the Atma, the doorway to Brahman, the true evolving self. I consider it as like the Chinese astrology is something that your Atma has to express through. And the Atma is contained even beyond the Vedic astrology chart. It's a transcendental self that's has the capacity to learn the lessons of the elements of its soul if it gives its life in divine surrender to Brahman, the true divine knowledge, and the heart of the universe. So, in my opinion, most things regarding especially psychology boil down to the figures of the tropical horoscope. Although, when you read your Ba-Z chart, it tells you a lot about your health, and the health of your body is a deep fissure for psychological development in childhood. So if you've got anything going on in your body that's expressed in the Chinese chart, like if you've got too much water, might mean you have too much kidney. I've got too much water in my chart, and I used to pee the bed when I was young. And this lays out a certain psychological dynamic, you know. It's like you're afraid of going to sleep because there's this mystical thing that's happening that you can't control, and it's in your body and you can't control it. That lays out a psychological dynamic where the water person might learn, what is it that I have to do to be in control of my body? And, you know, someone like me, I got very into just like yoga and qigong and ways of circulating the energy in my body. And that's part of, I've learned to be passive that way, and that's part of water's thing. And so that tells a lot about how I'm going to express my tropical astrology soul, right? In the end, how I say it is that the Chinese animal, the ox, it reflects the feng shui of one's preferred relationship network, one's creative, interpersonal aesthetic style. I think that Chinese astrology feng shui, it attracts luck by the swing of your connection with other people. Say other people in your triangle, or, as we see here, by understanding how our subconscious aesthetic works with those of others through the Chinese signs, we can attract others who expand us with little effort. It's just natural in them as it's natural in us. And we can also be sympathetic to those people whose subconscious mind is different but possibly compensatory to our own. When you're dealing with a Chinese animal who doesn't get along with your own animal, they probably have a lot to teach you, but you also have to be aware that they are trying to solidify interests that might get in the way of your interests. You should be, especially Libra ox can be greatly diplomatic in this regard. I would say the Libra ox and even the Taurus ox has a deep sense of, once they've experienced enough people in all regards, you know, the ox itself is generally a good Democrat, or diplomat, not Democrat. Diplomat. The ox, because of its yin earth nature, everyone else is running on their particular element. The ox is the one who feels in its gut where all of the intentions are going and which ones need to be balanced in this moment. So, and ox is Spartan about it. Now, the ox, through the Libra or Taurus or even Cancer, can talk when the metal triangle people are being a little bit too tough on the water triangle people. Or I mean let's say we've got a bunch of water triangle people and they are at odds with a bunch of wood triangle people in the group, like goat, boar, and rabbit. And the goat, boar, and the rabbit are wood triangle, and they're mystical, and they're trying to keep everybody emotionally happy and centered. And the metal triangle people are saying, well, screw that. What's important is the logical, rational analysis of what we have to do. The ox, Libra, or Taurus could come in. He would ultimately agree with the metal people, but they would probably see the potentials of what the enemy triangle are trying to express. And the ox would say, now everybody, we've got two ways of understanding reality, and we have to be able to at least listen to each other so that we don't lose the strength of one side or the other, but to marry these two perspectives. The Libra ox, because of its selfless serving nature, and it's logical, and it lives by its gut. So the ox will listen by gut instinct to what someone else who doesn't usually think in the way, even like a goat. Goat and ox are opposites. Ox will listen in its gut to the goat's intention, and even if rooster and snake don't like it, the ox can at least see where they're coming from, see the logic behind it, and read into what it is that they're trying to bring to the conversation. And they could hold the space for people who are different than the ox's way of thinking. The Libra and Taurus ox are particularly good at this. They always, even if the other person gets on the ox's nerve, they will tend to hold the space for them to offer what the ox might be blind to. The ox can always, Taurus and Cancer are deeply rooted in the things that it believes and the experiences that they've had. But because they know that the world is such a transformative place, they may be good at transforming, and so again, they will hold the space for someone who has something that they need to hear. Ox, the water ox, the Water Pancha Tattva ox, of all three types, Cancer, Taurus, and Libra, are very good at that. Probably one of the best. And that's one of the reasons why people love them and feel that there's a deep transpersonal sense of strength and fortitude in this personality. Because this person has transformed so many times that there's a root, there's a stomach center, which is stable and which can digest all these different transforming circles, and they are the center of the cyclone, and people can feel that in them. But usually, in order to be the center of that cyclone, they have to let their arm, they have to twist around for a long time before they get the alchemical sense. It's like their metal has to be melted and melted and melted and reforged and melted and reforged, and eventually there's a steel spine which sees the transpersonal logical truth amongst all the spinning emotional wheels in any relationship or situation. If that makes sense to you folks. Feel free to pause this and just give it a quick read, but it essentially says that tropical astrology shows how the light of your awareness is internally guided through past impressions, ego development, and logic towards your involvement with others. It's the Cancer, Taurus, and Libra in you is a certain figment of your chart, whether it's your first house, second house, whatever. And the tropical chart will show how you deal with projecting your intentions out into the world, regardless of the social sphere or context. Even, Venus is like a social planet, but how your sun is angled from your Venus is all you. It has nothing to do, it will make you deal with Venus, which is others, in a different way. But that's like a stem of you. Who are you when nobody's around? What is your will outside the context of interpersonal dynamics? That's what the tropical chart is telling you. I guess I don't have the Chinese one in here. Damn, I've got another one that talks about... I guess this is it. I was supposed to switch these around, but while the tropical astrology describes who you are without any social context, the animal sign describes what you are, how you best get along and deal with other people in business and relationships, and how people see you in relationships. The year of the ox in this case expresses something deeply torrential in how you deal with other people and how other people see you in relationship and how they're used to dealing with you. Now we've got one more thing to talk about. It's essentially the dashas. We've kind of already talked about it a little bit. Essentially, I might not even need to. I'm going to put these here so that you can read my little note on the bottom. But it's essentially what we've already talked about. When Venus person is in the earthy Mercury dasha, particularly for the ox. That's why I've got these up here, okay. When you consider, if you're a water-centric person and you come into your Mercury dasha, the ox will probably do well for you for this Mercury dasha. It'll probably make you want to fortify and to hold on to something. Now, if you're all water and you're very emotional and you depend emotionally on other people, or if you're very concerned with psychological fortitude and feeling good, and the Mercury dasha comes along, and you don't have a strong Mercury, this is probably a period where your finances need to be worked out. No matter how good you feel, you need to have something solid that is going to care for you reliably for the rest of your life. Pay attention to this period since you're the ox, because ox will help your Mercury. But if you don't take advantage of this Mercury period, even if you've got a weak Mercury, if your Mercury is a mess in your chart, consider what this dasha is trying to teach you, because the ox will feel terrible if you just skip over this period of Mercury As a Venus-centric person, and you just think, oh, it doesn't matter that my finances are getting screwed, you know, my whole life is falling apart. That's what Mercury tends to do, is that it shakes the earth. And if you're so watery that you haven't been, you know, water carves a river and it takes all the dirt with it. And if you have so much a strong river that you've got no riverbed or no solid financial situation set up for yourself, that will deeply hurt, again, the yin earth, the spleen and the pancreas of the ox, who's just going to have anxiety because the water in you is trying to heal what is going on the earth, you know? So it's like, this could, if in a bad situation with a weak Mercury, you're going to try to get a business going and it's not going to work, and you're going to say, okay, well, now I've got to do this thing to make myself feel better. You could be like an alcoholic or something like that, or just you're going to want to find some way to relieve yourself of the emotions that the ox feels. And the ox feels super tense because the ox needs fortitude down the line to feel fortified, like whatever is going on in its life is going to last. An ox gets very worried if that doesn't happen. So consider this when you come into the Mercury Dasha. It could be painful for you, but it could give you, especially as an ox, some deep relief that might last you for the rest of your life, because you only get Mercury Dasha once. In the sub-Dasha periods, Mercury will come along and say, hey, by the way, how's this thing doing? And it'll check again. But if you have a strong Mercury, it's very good for the ox, and it will help the Water Pancha Tattva person feel a little bit better about itself. Although, if you've got some seriously strong earth that's a little too strong, this could dry up the Venus. This period, you could get an opportunity to have a solid, reliable, secure job for the rest of your life. That might not give you the opportunity to climb higher, which this person doesn't care that much about. But if it's so demanding of you that you can't love your family, the Venus in you, the Cancer, the Libra, the Taurus, you know, Taurus loves to have its own sense of feeling calm and stable and working towards things. And if you get into this business during the Mercury Dasha, the Earth Dasha, where you have to sacrifice the things that make you happy at home and chill, you get very nervously agitated because you're in this business and you have to deal objectively and not think emotionally. Again, it's good for you, but don't let it completely kill the water nature, which is supposed to be a deep part of your soul's expression as someone ruled by the Water Pancha Tattva. Same sort of deal with fire. Let's say, feel free again to pause this. Are you guys with me here? Good. Feel free to pause this and read about it. But essentially, when you come into the Mars Dasha for a Venus person, let's see. Yeah, you know, this could show that you've got a lack of a certain type of endurance. It's different from Mercury's endurance. Mercury is more about like if you're a strongly Venus, if you're a Taurus or Libra person, or a Cancer person, okay? Let's say, yeah, you're one of these three, and you have a strong Mercury. You went through the Mercury Dasha. Now you've got a strong business foundation that's logically done, okay? And you can, the Venus in you, the Water Pancha Tattva has made you good at kind of knowing yourself, what makes you feel like you're healed. And this has carried you to be able to sustain the things going on Earth with Mercury. Now, this is like kind of emotionally centered, but it's like your own personal feeling of spiritual devotion and emotion. You might even feel devoted to whatever business or whatever career you develop through Mercury. And you might be inclined through Mercury to be passionately devoted to the buildup of that thing. It might be for a social reason. You know, you could be a martial artist who's trying to build a business out of martial arts. And, you know, the earth in you is being built by the devotional love because you feel socially responsible for this thing that you're trying to build. That's a good water and earth combination. Now, let's say that the water in you knows what makes it happy. Let's say you get a family because you're a Water Pancha Tattva person. They tend to be interested in that sort of thing. Libra, Taurus, and Cancer. Although Taurus and Cancer tend to give it some time before they make the contract with the lover. Cancer is more inclined to just dip their toe into it. If you've committed yourself and you've decided you're a Water Pancha person, you've decided that the most important thing, your business is only there in order that you can love your family. Okay? That's usually the water mentality. I've got to be hard, I've got to be Mercury in order that I can sustain and fortify my love for the people that I am so deeply living by. Now, let's say what happens is that fire comes along. You've got the fire dasha, and your son or your daughter is a little brat who desperately needs something like all the time. Or let's say someone at your job in your business comes along. You've solidified the fact that you know you have to feel good about things because you're water. You've solidified the business, that's earth. Now you invite people to be a part of your business, and you find that they're very, Mars Dasha will bring in people who are hard and who have these primary complexes that need to get worked out. And people with primary Mars complexes who need to work out this Mars stuff, they tend, you know, if they were bullied when they were young or something like that, they tend to look for people like a Mars Water Pancha Tattva person who might take the Mars beating. And water will, if they're devoted to earth, if they're devoted to the business or whatever it is that they're doing. But when Mars comes along, this Mars capacity, you know, maybe once you get into business, let's say, you link up with somebody who's knows what the world's all about, and they're very Mars about it, you know. You've got to deal with Mars, and you've got to deal with this masculine personality who dictates what has to be done. And Mars Dasha will sort of force you to deal with these primary emotional complexes in yourself and other people. And if you have been ignoring the emotional complexes in yourself just because you're devoted to the earth thing, you're devoted to your job, and if someone comes along and says, hey, bitch, go and get my hammer, and you haven't worked out your emotional complexes, you might say, well, I don't want to cause trouble with this person, so I'm going to go and get him this hammer, because I know, even the ox will say, I've devoted to this job, and if this person's going to be a dick to me, I have never had to say no to anybody, so I'm gonna go and get the hammer for that person. And that person makes it a habit on you, and it could deeply crush your, if you don't have a strong Mars yourself, it could deeply crush your self-confidence, and you'll just want to have more Venus to just drink, and oh, my boss is such a dick to me, but I have to because I'm glued into this job, and I've made, you know, whether it's Libra or Taurus, I've made the business association, I've told them and promised them on a contract that I would be there for no matter how fucked up their own Martian emotional complexes and power struggles are, and their power trips. So if you're a deeply water-centric person, whether it's Cancer, Taurus, or Libra, you won't deal with it right in the moment. Instead, you'll take a drink and say, I'll get them back later. I'll find some way to fuck around with them back. But ultimately, if you're ruled by the Water Pancha Tattva, you just tend to deflect. You deflect other people's Mars and wash it out. And sometimes that will work. But if you don't have a strong, stable Mars yourself, this emotional thing with people bombarding you with this hard primary emotional complexes, if you don't deal with them in yourself, and Ox usually will. Ox is really good at saying, okay, hold on. I don't care how many business contracts. I know we're in this business contract together, which means you're not going anywhere. If I tell you to fuck off right now, you better fuck right off, okay? We're in this thing together, and you need to deal with my nature in the same way I need to deal with yours. And if you don't deal with mine, I'm going to fucking punch you in the head. That's somebody who has, well, I'm a Scorpio, and that was a little bit of like my own thing, you know, but that's an example of an Ox with one of these Water Pancha Tattva emphasis, who's in the Mars Dasha, and they've always told everybody, it's okay, I'm gonna help you, and everything's fine, and oh, you can yell at me, it's okay, but ultimately, I know my business is going well, so you can insult me all you want, but sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. If they keep up that mentality to the point where this person is actually taking advantage of them, there's going to be something that has to crack in you. And you have to learn to express your Mars to a point where it's like, look, I'm a nice guy, but like, you got to learn when it's too much. And some Mars people are just so hungry that they're not gonna let you go, you know? So these are the kind of things that we have to consider for someone in a Mars Dasha who's, if you've got a strong Venus, you'll learn to have that discipline and express it. And at the end of the day, you know that your emotional sphere is taken care of at home. Another example of this is like if you're dealing with a child. This is a great example of this. If you've got a child and all you're focused on is the happy side of family, come and love me because of these things that I buy you. Let's say Ox promises all the things, and their business is solid, and the Venus in them just wants to spoil their children. But if you have a weak Mars in your Mars Dasha, you know, you might find randomly, whoops, that your child is like spoiled, and has been treating you like a rag doll and saying, come on, Dad, you said you promised this, and, you know, come, and like they'll get like pushy, and you have to learn in the Mars Dasha to balance the desire to love them, because you don't want to let go of the love for them, but you also have to show them that you've got your own Mars and keep them in balance and in check. And, well, you know, these are the kind of balances that we need to keep in check in order for people to express the Pancha Tattvas in the best way that they can. So that was a whole lot about those particular things. Now we're going to consider what some authors have said on the subject of this Western sun sign, or these Western sun signs, in combination with the sign of the Ox. Which means that, ladies and gentlemen, that will be that for this particular video. Now I'm gonna stop broadcasting, and then I'm going to go live again right after this. Feel free to go on my YouTube channel and take a peek for me, because the next thing we're gonna do is 3 different videos. One will be the year of the Ox with the sign of Cancer. One will be the year of the Ox with the sign of Libra, and one will be the year of the Ox with the sign of Taurus, because that will give us a individual picture of these 3 signs, and they're going to come from various different books that I have beside me. So if you got something out of this video, please feel free to look at your specific sun sign combination. Mind you, again, this video was catering to like the Ascendant Lord, the Atmakarka, the highest Shadbala planet. You know, if any of those are the Moon or Venus, and you're in the sign of Ox, this video would have done good for you. The next video is going to be specifically catering to when you have the Sun in these 3 signs with the sign of the Ox, because that is what the authors had in mind. I hope you guys enjoyed listening to me ramble on about this particular combination. My name is Dustin Cormier, and it's a deep honor for anybody who is interested in these things and is getting something out of watching these videos. I'm particularly interested in underlining what the difference between Chinese and tropical and what it's all about. Feel free to drop a comment, make your own video in a response. Let's start talking about the Chinese animal signs, because there's a big market for tropical astrology and Western astrology on YouTube, but there's nothing on the Chinese, and that's what I'm trying to squash together. And I can't do it by myself, because if I'm the only one guy squawking about it, then there's nothing else to deal with and through. I need some of that Venus, folks, so feel free to let me know what you think, and I'll see you guys on the next episode, basically right now. Take care.